Good afternoon. Welcome to my message of the day. I'm Warren, the rector here at St. Columba's. Recently I've been reading a chunk of a sermon from Gregory of Nyssa. He was a bishop in the early church, 4th century AD. And in the sermon he launches into a great diatribe against slavery. He says things like, who is the seller, who is the buyer? He's greatly indignant that anyone would dare sell another human being or buy one, a humanity made in the image of God. Then he says, to God alone belongs this power. Then he says, no, hang on, not even to God himself lies this power. Because God would not renege on a gift, the gift of freedom that God had given us in Christ. We are redeemed from slavery to sin, and so that gift of freedom is not revocable. And that got me thinking about a saying that you often hear, a little bit of logic about God, about God's love, and about God being all-powerful. The logic is that there is suffering in the world. So if God was all-loving and all-powerful, then there shouldn't be any suffering. So given that there is suffering, God is either not all-loving or not all-powerful. Notice that little bit of logic assumes the Christian legacy, that God is love. It's hard to imagine a pre-Christian pagan, for instance, even considering the idea that God is love, to think of God as part of God's identity as loving. But the problem in the little bit of logic is the relationship between God and the world, between God and creation, I should say. All-powerful in that little bit of logic means that God could act like the slave owner, so to speak, to the slave, to just get done what needs to be get done what needs to be done, to order, to crush the slave, that is creation, to remold, to remake, to ensure that there is no longer any suffering in the world. But if God overpowered us that way, overpowered creation that way, God's relationship with creation would never recover. And it would change, because our relationship with God is one in which we have integrity, we have our own dignity, and God's ultimate goal for creation can never be reached by being like a slave owner, so to speak, by having that power to just crush, or the willingness, I should say, just to crush creation or what's going on in creation. Because God is love and God is all powerful, but creation and God's plan for us is grounded in love, not coercion. So Christianity is against slavery, and not even being slaves to God, in fact. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.